Hi, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your patience. So good afternoon, and I want to give everyone an update with recently announced guidelines in coordination with the state. I will today be updating our latest executive order to go into effect this Saturday, May 9th. This next phase that we're entering into as part of this crisis, we're taking slow steps to reopening. And I want to emphasize that these are very slow steps to reopening. And in fact, as we move into this new phase of this crisis, life isn't going to look much different than what it is like and than what it looks like right now. But they are indeed a step forward for all of us. Everything depends going forward on how our community, our city, and our state respond to some of these steps going forward. And as we move forward, that will determine whether it makes sense to take yet more steps going forward. So we're still on guard. It's important to remember that we're not out of this crisis yet. And whether we continue to move forward depends entirely on the continued cooperation of all of our residents. So with that said, in lockstep with the state, we will be reopening our non-essential retail establishments under all restrictions to be outlined by the executive order issued by the governor later this week. I've been in contact with the governor, and my team and her team have been in steady contact over the past several days, and we feel comfortable with this from a public health standpoint. We believe that this can be safely done while also resuming some normal activities that folks have been without for a while, and in particular, getting folks back to work who have been out of work for a good while now. A question has come up with respect to the mall. So the mall will be opening on a very, very limited basis, meaning only stores with independent entrances, meaning that the interior of the mall will not be open anytime during this next phase. We anticipate that at some point in the future, the interior of the mall will reopen, but we are not there yet. And so we're coordinating with the state to make sure that we have the right plan in place for these kinds of businesses that don't have independent entrances, and a plan in place for stores that do have independent entrances. With this said, with the steps that we're taking to open some non-essential retail establishments, this does not include venues that encourage and allow for close contact between people. So, for example, gyms, health clubs, spas, aquatic centers, yoga studios, martial arts studios, and massage parlors, all of them will remain closed at this time. So that's non-essential retail. We're also working with the state to look at our restaurant and food establishments, and they are still permitted as of now to offer takeout, delivery, and pickup services. But we're working very closely with the state to define the path forward for when it's time to resume dine-in services. For now, we are looking at dine-in services in some outdoor spaces. That means that we're thinking creatively about parking spots, parking lots, and potentially even sidewalks and streets to see where we can help our businesses expand and do so safely. Again, more guidance on this will be coming in the coming days from the state, and we're helping them put that together so that we're coordinated and we can do this right. So going back to reopening of our parks, our green spaces, and bike paths, they will be reopening, but only with several limitations. And these limitations are first and foremost that they're open only to active use, meaning you can walk, you can jog, you can ride a bicycle, but we need people to continuously be active. They're not open for picnics, they're not open for gatherings, and or anything like that. Also, the parking lots are going to remain closed, so we're asking folks to please stay in your neighborhood and use the parks in your neighborhoods. Even though these parks will reopen, fields, courts, and playgrounds, and also the parking lots, as I mentioned, they will remain closed at this time. As I mentioned a second ago, gatherings of all kinds in these spaces will not be permitted. And on top of that, we are going to require, under the governor's executive order, that everyone wear face masks who's using our parks. So the parks will reopen, but only under several limitations, and we ask everyone to abide by them. So while I'm just as excited as everyone else to be starting on the path to our normal day-to-day lives, I believe we're in a better place today than we were 3 weeks ago. Specifically, we are reasonably confident as a city, and I believe as a state, that the crisis is not going to take us on the path in which it overwhelms our hospitals. In other words, we've been successful as a state in flattening the curve. However, that does not mean that the crisis has passed. It does not mean that we're on the other side of it just yet. And most importantly, I want everyone to know that even though we are taking this slight step forward, we cannot relax and we cannot let down our guard. In fact, many of the activities that will now be allowed come with additional restrictions, such as the mandatory use of masks that I mentioned just a second ago. Our team, in conjunction with the state, is going to continue to closely monitor the number of COVID-19 positive cases and the number of hospitalizations as we begin this reopening process. To that effect, all of our city buildings will remain closed at this time, and all other COVID-19 related restrictions will remain in place through June 5th.